Welcome back to MovieCast, hosted by me, Liam Harrison. And today, I'm diving into one of the wildest, boldest theories I've ever unpacked on this channel. A theory about a Tony Stark we've never met on screen. A Tony who didn't just build suits or AI or world-saving technology, but built something even bigger. The structure of the multiverse itself. A Tony who felt the death of Earth 616 Tony Stark, felt it like a tremor inside his bones, and decided that no version of him should ever have to suffer that same fate again. This theory begins not on Earth 616, but on a distant alternate Earth, where Tony Stark pushed his intellect into places even the MCU hasn't dared to explore. And on one night, in that universe, he experiences a vision so vivid, so visceral, that it rewires the entire trajectory of his life. He sees himself die, but it isn't him. And that impossible contradiction sets the stage for everything that follows. This Tony wakes from the experience drenched in sweat, his heart pounding as if he had run miles in seconds. He tries to rationalize it the way he rationalizes everything, through tech, through science, through data, but nothing fits. He saw a version of himself snap his fingers, unleash cosmic power, defeat Thanos, and burn away into dust. It doesn't line up with his history, his timeline, or his universe's own events. At first, he tells himself it's stress, a dream, a glitch in neural patterns caused by overwork. But then his most advanced machines begin detecting signals that shouldn't exist. Quantum fluctuations, faint and fading, echoing a moment of death from a universe he's never visited. And that's when it hits him. This wasn't imagination. This was connection. Some kind of multiversal resonance had allowed him to feel the exact instant Earth 616 Tony Stark died. This variant, Tony becomes obsessed. He replays the data, expands the sensors, and pushes into research no Tony Stark has ever attempted. Because for the first time in his life, he isn't motivated by ego or competition or even the desire to protect his own world. He's driven by the weight of another Tony's sacrifice, one he never made, but somehow mourns. As the days pass, the multiversal echo torments him. It's not just a vision, it's a wound, like a phantom pain from a limb he never had. He feels the loss of Earth 616. Tony as though it were his own, a curious blend of grief and guilt. Why him? Why that Tony? Why did a stranger version of himself make a sacrifice so final, so absolute, while he continues to live? This question worms its way into his mind and becomes the catalyst for something extraordinary. He begins constructing a new tier of technology, tools designed not just to observe universes, but to map them, to understand their divergences, their dangers, and their collapse points. He digs into quantum signatures, temporal flows, and cross-dimensional harmonics until he stumbles across a horrifying realization. If one Tony Stark died saving his universe, nothing guarantees another universe won't fall apart even worse. A single sacrifice can't stabilize an infinite system. And so he decides he needs to do something no Tony has ever done. He must protect the multiverse itself. The idea seeds slowly at first, but then it grows with unbearable urgency. Because if universes can bleed into each other enough for one Tony's death to be felt by another, then everything is more connected and more fragile than anyone realized. Driven by this newfound awareness, the variant Tony channels every ounce of his genius into building prototypes that can identify and regulate branching timelines. Not for control, not for power, but for preservation. He designs complex stabilizers capable of detecting anomalies before they fracture into chaos. At the same time, he builds a multiversal mapping AI, something far beyond even Jarvis or Friday. A system capable of analyzing infinite probability threads and predicting collapse scenarios. Through sleepless nights and endless experimentation, he begins to uncover just how unstable the multiverse really is. It isn't a clean lattice of parallel universes, it's a living organism brimming with unpredictability. Every decision creates ripples. Every ripple risks a storm. And as the storms grow, Tony realizes the multiverse needs something beyond technology alone. It needs structure, governance, protection. But no government or council could ever manage infinite timelines. No army could patrol causes and consequences across eternity. So he begins thinking bigger. What if he could create an entire institution, something that appears bureaucratic, perhaps even dull, to conceal a far more elaborate truth, a force designed to stabilize reality without anyone realizing who was behind it? And thus, in this theory, we reach the most radical twist of all. The variant Tony Stark becomes the secret founder of the TVA. Not He Who Remains, not a Kang variant. No, it was Stark all along. Not for domination, but for survival. Tony crafts the perfect cover. A faceless bureaucracy operating outside of time, built to monitor branching paths and preserve universal integrity. He hides his identity so deeply that even the Minutemen, judges, analysts, and hunters don't know who truly made their citadel. He programs systems that function autonomously, guided by layers of AI and temporal algorithms that trace back only to encrypted cores he hides across the time stream. The TVA becomes both his greatest invention and his greatest burden. Decades pass, but he never appears. Not physically, not publicly. Instead, he watches from the background, overseeing the vast machinery of time like a ghost engineer. He doesn't crave credit. He doesn't want worship. He only wants to ensure no universe ever again requires a Tony Stark to die the way Earth 616 Tony did, alone, burning, holding the weight of the cosmos in one hand. The TVA is his answer to that tragedy. A multiversal shield forged from grief. But even in all his brilliance, Tony understands that no system is foolproof. The multiverse is too wild, too complex, too susceptible to forces beyond simple predictability. So he designs fail-safes, hidden triggers, backdoor protocols, emergency contingencies that no one else knows exist. Only he can activate them, and only under dire circumstances. For years, the TVA functions as intended. Timelines stabilize. Branching remains controlled. Chaos stays at bay. But Tony notices something unsettling. Distant tremors echoing through timelines that shouldn't be able to produce such impacts. Every trace, every signature points back to the same source, a growing presence, one powerful enough to bend universes, rewrite history, and distort the flow of time itself. Doom. Not just a Doom, but a Doom variant, so intelligent and so ruthless that he begins pushing against the TVA's boundaries without even realizing Stark is behind them. The variant Tony monitors these events with increasing concern. He senses the coming storm. He anticipates the possibility that the TVA may someday fall. And he creates one final ultimate contingency, a temporal loophole hidden so deeply within the TVA's core that only a mind identical to his could ever discover it. The multiverse begins to tremble. Doom rises. And during the events we'll eventually witness in Avengers Doomsday, everything this Tony feared comes bursting into reality. Doom shatters timelines like glass, tearing through causal barriers with the fury of someone who believes the multiverse is his to reshape. The TVA buckles as its systems reach unprecedented strain. Alarms echo across time hubs. Branching pathways become floods. Entire pocket universes implode. And then, a portal opens. The footage would become legendary, Robert Downey Jr., but not the one we lost in Endgame. This variant steps through the breach wearing armor designed for multiversal traversal, glowing with temporal signatures unlike anything the MCU has shown. He emerges into a chaotic battlefield where timelines collapse around him, and standing opposite him is Dr. Doom. But not just any Doom. A Doom variant also played by RDJ. The confrontation is electric, cosmic, and symbolic all at once. Two reflections of Stark. Two potential destinies embodied in one shared face. One who saves. One who conquers. The moment they lock eyes, the entire multiverse seems to hold its breath. Doom glares not with shock, but recognition. A recognition he can't explain. And the variant Tony, battle-worn yet steady, reveals the truth that changes everything. He tells Doom that he created the TVA, not to rule, not to control, but to ensure the multiverse remained intact. He explains how the systems Doom has been ripping apart weren't relics of a Kang empire, but the culmination of Stark's life's work. He had engineered a cosmic safety net, a structure delicate enough to preserve infinite realities, yet strong enough to prevent their collision. Doom, of course, mocks him, calls the TVA weak, calls the multiverse chaotic by nature, accuses Tony of being too afraid to embrace the full potential of infinite timelines. But Tony remains unfazed. He's not here to boast. He's here because he anticipated this confrontation long before Doom arrived. The variant Stark warns Doom that beneath the TVA's architecture lies something he built intentionally, a loophole, a trapdoor designed to activate if Doom ever broke the multiverse beyond repair. And while Doom scoffs at the idea of Stark outplaying him, Tony knows what's coming next because he planned for it years before this war even began. The war escalates to catastrophic levels. Doom unleashes cosmic forces amplified through arcane science, tearing through entire branches of reality. Timelines collapse. Universes buckle. Multiversal membranes rupture. The TVA cannot withstand the assault. It shatters in spectacular fashion, its citadels fracturing into pure temporal debris. Entire departments vanish into void storms. The sacred timeline approach becomes meaningless. Doom stands triumphant as the architect of destruction. The TVA is gone. The multiverse falls into chaos. And from this chaos, Doom begins constructing something unprecedented. Battleworld, the patchwork fusion of broken universes stitched together under his iron rule. But what Doom doesn't realize is that the moment the TVA collapsed, Tony's hidden loophole activated. It wasn't a weapon. It wasn't a trap. It was an escape hatch. One designed to rescue key Avengers from imminent erasure, pulling them out of collapsing universes and preserving them within an undisclosed pocket of space-time. Tony knew the TVA might fall someday, so he created a way to save the best of their worlds for a final fight. Doom believes he won, but Tony has already shifted the board. Those rescued Avengers, scattered variants, and survivors from broken universes find themselves in a liminal reality created by Stark's emergency protocol. Here, time behaves differently. It is neither stable nor chaotic, but rather shaped by intention. Tony arrives last, exhausted from multiversal traversal, his armor scarred and fraying from the strain of bypassing collapse points. But when he steps into that space and sees the heroes he saved, heroes who, in many universes, he never even met, he finally feels the weight of what he's been carrying for decades. He explains the truth to them. The TVA was never meant to become a prison or a judge. It was a stabilizer. A system designed to prevent Doom, not impose order. And when Doom broke the multiverse, Tony's last failsafe kicked in, gathering those capable of standing against him in one last universe, Battleworld. Tony tells them that everything they've seen, the collapse, the chaos, the merging of universes, was predicted in his earliest simulations. Doom was always the greatest threat to existence. And now, with the multiverse reduced to fragments and stitched into a throne for Doom, the final battle must begin. Tony steps into his role not as the billionaire inventor or even the armored Avenger, but as the architect of a resistance. He understands the terrain better than anyone because he predicted its coming long before. Battleworld is made of fragments, each one a universe that died prematurely. Stark studied such collapse events for decades. He knows their weak points, their hidden strengths, and the rules that no longer apply. From these fragments, he formulates a plan. One that doesn't rely on brute strength or cosmic energy, but on strategy, because he understands Doom. He understands how Doom thinks, how Doom manipulates, how Doom constructs empires from fear and power and the illusion of inevitability. Tony tells the Avengers that Doom may rule Battleworld, but he doesn't rule the system underneath it. Battleworld is built from broken universes. Stark spent his life studying such fractures. In that knowledge lies their chance. Tony reveals that the loophole he left in the TVA didn't just save them, it left Doom vulnerable. Doom believes himself a god, but his foundation is built on timelines Tony already mapped. That's Stark's real weapon. Not armor, not gadgets, knowledge. The Avengers follow Tony across Battleworld, navigating twisted landscapes that defy logic, cities existing beside wastelands from other universes, cosmic remnants fused with medieval ruins, shattered Wakandan tech melded with ancient alien artifacts. Tony deciphers each fragment as if reading pieces of a book he wrote. He explains how Doom stitched these worlds together, which seams are weakest, which boundaries are illusory, and where they can exploit the cracks. Every step reveals new layers of multiversal physics. Tony speaks not with arrogance, but with the clarity of someone who has spent years fighting alone. Someone who learned to treat universes as variables in an equation. The Avengers watch him move with a solemn precision, understanding now why this Stark became the TVA's secret founder. He wasn't trying to build a cage. He was trying to keep everything from collapsing. And now that it has collapsed, he's the only one who can navigate the remains. Tony explains that Doom's power depends on the cohesion of Battleworld. If they destabilize key fragments, they can weaken his control. Not topple him yet, but create the first cracks in the armor of a god. Night falls across Battleworld, though night is more a metaphor than a truth. The sky flickers with overlapping cosmic layers, stars from different universes misaligned, moons appearing and vanishing as fragments shift. Tony stands at the edge of a broken cliff, tracing data through holographic displays projected from a portable multiversal stabilizer. He identifies the core, the point where Doom anchored Battleworld's power. A nexus built from remnants of realities where Doom achieved victory. If that anchor falls, the entire construct destabilizes. But reaching it won't be easy. Doom's enforcers, variants of villains from countless universes, patrol its perimeter. Tony develops a diversion strategy, one requiring precision and trust. As he speaks, the Avengers notice something different about him. This isn't the charismatic showman or the sarcastic strategist. This Tony Stark carries scars. Emotional, intellectual, temporal. His hands tremble slightly when he mentions the Earth 616 Tony's death echo. And that's when he reveals the truth. The vision he felt years ago wasn't just a signal, it was a warning. Some versions of Tony die to save their universes. But some, like Doom, twist their genius into domination. The vision pushed him to choose which side of that divide he'd stand on. With the plan set, the Avengers launched their first assault on Doom's infrastructure. Tony leads from the front, not because he seeks glory, but because he understands every possible reaction Doom might take. The battle erupts across a fractured landscape where gravity fluctuates and time stutters in irregular pulses. Tony uses these anomalies to their advantage, guiding teammates into microzones where their abilities amplify. Doom's forces fight with ferocity, but they're unprepared for Tony's intimate knowledge of Battleworld's unstable physics. Every maneuver exposes a weak point. Every counterattack reveals a blind spot. The Avengers push through, but Tony notices something unsettling. Doom's power is increasing, not linearly, exponentially. The Battleworld anchor is feeding him. Tony realizes this entire patchwork universe is essentially a power conduit. Doom is drawing strength from the collective wreckage. He becomes stronger with every fragment they cross. But Tony also sees the flaw. If Doom depends on Battleworld's stability, then destabilizing it will drain him. Doom believes he's constructed perfection. Tony knows perfection is the most fragile thing in existence. After narrowly escaping Doom's first counterstrike, Tony and the Avengers regroup in a shattered remnant of New York City, one from a universe where Ultron won. Stark studies the ruins with solemn intensity. Seeing another world destroyed by another iteration of his own creation weighs heavily on him. He confesses to the Avengers that part of his motivation wasn't just the death echo from Earth 616 Tony. It was the realization that across the multiverse, Tony Stark is a universal constant of creation and destruction. Some versions save worlds, others doom them. The TVA was his attempt to break that pattern, to prevent the rise of catastrophic Tony variants like Doom or the creation of monsters like Ultron. But the multiverse, he admits, is too vast to control. He can only guide it. His gaze hardens as he concludes that maybe that's enough. Maybe guiding is all anyone can do. In that moment, the Avengers recognize the depth of this Tony's burden. He carries the responsibility of infinite selves, infinite choices, infinite consequences, and yet he still chooses to fight. Not to rewrite destiny, but to give the multiverse a chance to rebuild. The next phase involves infiltrating the Nexus Chamber, the heart of Battleworld. Tony explains that this chamber holds the data Doom used to stitch universes together. If they can reach it, they can access the underlying logic Doom imposed on reality. Tony believes Doom cannot truly control what he doesn't understand. Doom acts from ego and emotion. Tony acts from analysis and strategy. As they approach the chamber, they face bizarre distortions. Streets fold into themselves. Physics behaves like liquid. Voices from collapsed universes whisper through static. Tony keeps the team anchored, calibrating their stabilizers in real time, adjusting to fluctuations in dimensional pressure. They arrive at the chamber and find it unnervingly simple. A circular room formed from fragments of dozens of realities, each fused into a rotating mosaic. In the center floats a model of Battleworld, a holographic globe stitched from damaged timelines. Tony's eyes widen as he recognizes something horrifying. Doom used pieces of the TVA's destroyed core as binding agents. Stark's architecture now serves Doom's tyranny. For the first time, Tony feels a sting of failure. The system he built to save universes is now empowering the very monster he feared. Instead of despairing, Tony channels his frustration into renewed determination. He identifies a hidden coding pattern within the Battleworld model, one that only someone with Stark-level intuition would notice. It's the loophole he left within the TVA systems, still present even after being absorbed into Doom's structure. A dormant pathway, a key, a weakness. Tony activates the sequence, and the chamber erupts with cascading data streams. The holographic globe splits into fractal layers, revealing contradictions Doom never understood. Fragments that never truly integrated. Temporal seams that were only superficially stable. Tony manipulates the patterns, setting off microfractures across Battleworld's architecture. The impact is instant. Doom senses the disruption. His godlike power flickers. The sky cracks like digital glass. Reality trembles. Tony turns to the Avengers and gives a single steady command. This is the opening. Move. They sprint from the chamber just as Doom arrives in a thunderous blast of cosmic energy. Doom sees the hologram collapsing and realizes, too late, that someone exploited the one flaw he didn't account for. Stark. Planning for Stark. Doom unleashes fury across Battleworld. Universes convulse in waves of violent distortion. Entire regions crumble into void as Doom attempts to reassert control. The Avengers scatter to weaken the remaining anchors Tony identified. Every strike they make sends ripples through the multiversal fabric, destabilizing Doom further. Tony faces off against Doom's enforcers, wielding tech fused with temporal algorithms, bypassing their defenses by manipulating micro-timelines around each conflict. Yet even as their plan succeeds, Tony sees the cost. The more Battleworld destabilizes, the more universes dissolve into nothing. The multiverse cannot survive like this. Stark realizes one final truth. Battleworld must fall completely for reality to reset. They can't save the fragments. They must destroy the fusion holding them captive. Doom appears above the battlefield, enraged, unstable, overflowing with collapsing power. He calls Tony a coward who hides behind data and machines. Tony replies with quiet certainty that knowledge isn't cowardice, it's foresight. Doom rages. Tony prepares, and the multiverse quakes under the weight of two destinies. As the Avengers converge on the final anchor point, Tony slips away into the collapsing Nexus chamber. He knows Doom will follow. It has to be just the two of them. No distractions. No armies. No universes to hide behind. The chamber flickers with chaotic light, the walls oscillating between realities. Doom enters, his presence warping the environment. The two RDJs stare at each other, one wearing armor forged from logic, the other wearing power forged from conquest. Doom accuses Tony of meddling in forces beyond his right. Tony argues that no one has the right to rule existence. Doom calls Stark inferior. Stark calls Doom predictable. They circle one another, each representing a different path Stark could have taken. One path of selflessness, one path of domination. Tony activates the last stabilizer fragment embedded in his suit, triggering a controlled reality collapse inside the chamber. Doom braces for a fight, unaware that Tony has already calculated every potential move. The final battle begins, not a clash of fists, but of ideologies, intellects, and destinies. The fight is brutal, chaotic, and poetic. Doom manipulates reality in bursts of raw cosmic energy, twisting space to trap Tony in loops. Tony counters by anchoring himself to micro-timelines, slipping through Doom's distortions with precision. Every strike Doom unleashes collapses part of the chamber. Every counter Tony deploys destabilizes Doom's foundation. It's not just armor versus sorcery, it's Stark versus Stark. Doom represents what happens when Tony's genius meets unchecked ego. Tony represents what happens when genius meets responsibility. Doom taunts him, saying the multiverse needs a ruler, not a protector. Tony responds that rulers destroy, protectors rebuild. Their energies clash, lighting the chamber with violent brilliance. Doom gains the upper hand, crushing Tony with gravitational pressure. Tony's suit fractures. But in that moment, Tony smiles, not in triumph, but understanding. Because Doom has stepped exactly where Tony predicted he would. On to the final collapse point Tony engineered. Tony triggers it. Doom's power implodes. The chamber detonates in cascading dimensional shockwaves. Doom is thrown back, his godlike aura flickering violently as Battleworld's remaining anchors crumble behind him. Tony is nearly crushed under temporal debris, but he stabilizes his suit long enough to rise. Doom staggers, his mask cracked, his power unraveling. Tony approaches him not with arrogance, but with solemn empathy. He tells Doom that brilliance doesn't justify tyranny. Genius doesn't excuse cruelty. Doom spits back that Stark is naive. Tony replies that the multiverse is too large for any one man to control. Doom's power collapses entirely. Battleworld begins its final, total disintegration. The chamber dissolves into void. Tony, despite everything, reaches out a hand because he refuses to let any version of himself die alone. Doom rejects it and vanishes into the collapsing multiverse. Tony barely escapes the imploding chamber, using the last of his stabilizer energy to rejoin the Avengers. They stand together as Battleworld dissolves around them, watching universes peel apart like layers of cosmic fabric. Tony activates the looped failsafe he embedded within the TVA decades ago. A final rebirth protocol. A way to restart the multiverse cleanly. Without Doom. Without Battleworld. Without the fractures that nearly destroyed everything. The protocol activates. Light engulfs them. Time resets. Universes reform. The multiverse breathes again. When the Avengers awaken, they find themselves in a new, stabilized reality. Not the old one. Not Battleworld. Something rebuilt. Something functional. Tony stands among them, exhausted but alive. He confesses that the multiverse will never be perfect, but it can be protected. He doesn't expect gratitude. He doesn't expect statues. He just hopes that the lessons from every universe, every Tony, every Doom, every sacrifice won't be forgotten. This Tony Stark becomes the strategist of the reborn multiverse, guiding heroes without ever claiming authority. He blends into legend not as a billionaire or a martyr, but as a guardian of infinite realities. And that brings us to the final moment, the shot destined to become iconic. Tony Stark Variance standing before the void of collapsing Battleworld, his armor cracked, his resolve unbroken. And opposite him, Dr. Doom, also RDJ, radiating collapsing cosmic energy, fighting to maintain the throne he carved from broken universes. Two Robert Downey Jr.'s Jr.'s. Two legacies. Two possible futures for Tony Stark. One built on sacrifice. One built on domination. Their clash becomes the defining moment of the multiverse saga, the pivot upon which reality is reborn. So that's the story. The theory of a Tony Stark variant who felt the death of Earth 616 Tony so deeply that he transformed his entire life into a mission to save the multiverse. A Tony who built the TVA, who predicted Doom, who fought him, and who ultimately led the last Avengers into the rebirth of existence. If this theory comes true in Secret Wars, we're not just watching a cameo or a multiverse gimmick, we're witnessing the evolution of Tony Stark into something mythic. Thanks for watching MovieCast, hosted by me, Liam Harrison. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and consider giving a super thanks of $20 to support our channel.